Alright, welcome back to Cracking the Code 3rd edition. This is part 3 of section 1, part 1, maintaining fiscal integrity. Alright, the cure for volunteeritis. If you are not absolutely certain that you are sovereign, guess what? You are not a sovereign. True sovereignty begins between the ears and is actualized when Big Brother's operatives determine that you are certain of exactly who you are and what you are doing. How does sovereignty manifest in today's world? As of March 9th, 1933, life is no longer the same in America. Currently, sovereignty is evidenced when the everyday contracts one enters into cease being one-sided, unconscionable bargains with the government agents, courts, taxmen, banks, and corporations, and uniformly begin being self-determined, consensual, clean hands, full disclosure type relationships, where each party is fully informed of the actual terms of the contract going into the contract, rather than discovering after the fact that one has been shanghaied. How does one cease being a victim of government, forced into complying with the terms of endless unconscionable contracts? By not consenting. Not consenting means just that, declining participation in the communication, not approving of that which is proposed, not taking part in the dialogue, opting out from the very beginning and first instant, before anything can be construed as having contractually begun, refusing discussion of the merits of the situation, informing the code enforcing revenue agent that you do not wish to do business with him or her, etc. The Supreme Court has consistently ruled that no one has any compulsion to enter into a contract with anyone else, including de facto municipal corporations like United States Incorporated, and its myriad of de facto political subdivisions, such as the state of Florida, rather than Florida Public, and the county of Dallas, all caps, rather than Dallas County. There is no requirement that anyone consent with anything. The word itself means mutual approval, and if you don't approve, no contract commences. There are probably many reasons why otherwise strong-willed Americans, shadow sovereigns, routinely submit and go along with what is forced upon them. Fear, misplaced trust, anticipated harm, feelings of guilt, etc. What is missed is that the revenue agent's first objective is demanding the money is forming a contract. The contract that can be justifiably enforced at any time if necessary. The judge, cop, attorney, taxman, etc. is raising revenue on the behalf of his or her corporate employer, and more times than not, sharing in the take. It's just business, and anyone can refuse to do business with anyone else, even with the government. Granted, this can be a terrifying experience if you are the object of something as life-threatening as a routine traffic stop, but you can still prevail despite the odds. Here's a little scenario. Motorist. Roll down your window about 1 inch, being hands on the steering wheel. What seems to be the problem, officer? Policeman. Would you please roll down your window a little further? Well, how can I help you, officer? License and registration, please. I do not consent to this conversation. I said license and registration now. I do not consent to this conversation. Policeman, placing his hand on his service revolver. If you don't hand over your license and registration right now, I'm gonna drag you out of that car and take you to jail. Motorist, rolling down window, smiling. Oh well, in that case, that's an entirely different matter, since you are using color, pretense of law, and threatening me with bodily harm and forcing me into doing business with you against my will. I'm happy to cooperate under duress. Here is my license and registration. May I have one of your business cards, please? Policeman hands over a business card. And here's a copy of the published copyright notice setting the terms of the consensual contract for unauthorized use of my common law copyrighted property. My name is copyrighted under common law, and the fee for its use is fairly steep, $500,000 per occurrence. So you might want to look over the terms of the consensual contract that you would be entering into by writing my copyrighted property on any piece of paper. Policeman: what the hell are you talking about? Motorist: I do not wish to do business with you, officer, but if you insist, and then I have an obligation to inform you that the fees associated with the use of my name, which is copyrighted, should you decide that you would like to do business with me and accept the obligation for payment of the fees for unauthorized use of my copyrighted property, then I will send you a bill, which is payable in full within 10 days of the date I send it. The terms of the contract stipulate that you pledge all of your tangible and intangible property and interest in property as security for payment of the debt you incur for the unauthorized use of my name. If you do not pay within 10-day period, then legal title for all of your property transfers to me, and I am free to take possession of it and dispose of it as I see fit, in order to recover the costs you incurred through the unauthorized use of my name, my copyrighted property. If you will give me your home address, I will bill you at home rather than at the station house. Policeman: I've never heard of this. Is this some kind of joke? Oh, no, sir. This is extremely serious. My published copyright notice is also filed with the county recorder. That contract you have in your hands is official public record. Here is a certified copy of the filing. What I am saying is no secret and no joke. I do not wish to do business with you, but if you insist and force me into it, I will cooperate, but you will be liable for the unauthorized use fees for the use of my copyrighted property. Since you have threatened me with bodily harm, I am very willing to cooperate under duress. At this point, the choice is entirely yours. What would you like to do? Policeman: have a nice day. So long. Wow, what just happened? The revenue agent officer for the insolvent municipal corporation and government put on a show of force and attempted to coerce the sovereign motorist into voluntarily entering and thereby accepting financial responsibility for a commercial contract, that is to say a traffic ticket in this case, that the officer intended on generating. The con never got off the ground because the motorist never accepted any communication from the officer until the issue of duress was established, thereby voiding any contract formed thereupon. Adroitly establishing on the motorist terms the parameters of the nonviolent consensual contract for the officer's unauthorized use of the common law copyrighted trade name. The cop then decided against doing business with the motorist. This is an example, however visceral, of what eliminating one-sided unconscionable bargains with the government actors means. Please note, however, this example has not been included here as a tacit recommendation that the reader undertake this strategy if confronted by a policeman in a traffic stop, though the above is an entirely plausible exchange. When the reader fully absorbs the knowledge available in this volume, he or she will be fully capable of making his or her own decisions about what should be said and how it should be said if confronted by code enforcement type actors and revenue agents, both in person and in writing. When someone realizes his or her creditor and sovereign standing, all confusion evaporates and he or she has knowingness and the certainty of what should be said and done in any circumstance. The above sample dialogue has been provided only because it is a vivid, easily understood illustration of how people can avoid being coerced into doing business with Big Brother at any level of confrontation. The issue of copyright infringement. There is really no problem with people using copyrighted property unless they use it for commercial gain. For example, that is to say, making money through the use of private property without the copyright holder's authorization. As addressed elsewhere in the manual, all demands for payment constitute an issue of public currency. Remember, there is no substance money in circulation, so like gold and silver. Until 1933, the Federal Reserve notes could be redeemed in lawful money of the United States, meaning the Federal Reserve notes never were and are still not lawful money. Having left the gold standard, we are now on the promise to pay standard. A promise to pay now creates money and is what funds your mortgage, auto loan, credit card purchases, and every other kind of loan you can take out, including traffic tickets. A promise to pay is a negotiable instrument. That is to say, a negotiable instrument can be money and is defined in the Uniform Commercial Code 3-104. The traffic cop in the above example intended on taking out a loan in the name of the motorist strawman's trade name by extracting the motorist's promise to pay, appear, and then pay, thus saddling him with the bill as surety for the trade name. The copyright notice short-circuits anyone from using your trade name for unauthorized commercial gain. The primary objective of virtually every single government on the face of the earth. Next section, consent equals contract. Had the motorist even rolled down the window upon the officer's opening statement, he would have formed a damning contract with the officer. Two timeless and universal maxims of law are contracts make the law and offer plus acceptance equals contract. So when someone makes an offer and you make an acceptance and you accept, then that is a contract. Pretty standard. The motorist's acceptance of and compliance with the offer and order of the officer before establishing the fact of duress finalizes a consensual, mutual approved contract between the two whereby the motorist has decided and he will do business with the officer on the officer's term, thereby providing the officer with justification for the use of any necessary violence in the carrying out any duties associated with the contract, expropriating revenue. When one party, or that is to say anyone, approaches another party seeking cooperation, information, etc., and the approached party cooperates, provides information, the approaching party is automatically in the driver's seat and is calling the shots. That is to say, his offers of communication are being accepted and acted upon. Police and other such professional provocateurs, especially judges, are experts in inducing cooperation and participation both through the threat of violence, incarceration, and the use of deceitful communication techniques, whereby the prey is tricked into entering the contract before becoming aware that any contract has been formed. All right, let's read through this. Title 17 USC Chapter 1 Section 107 Statutory Law lists fair use of copyrighted material that do not constitute copyright infringement. None of the fair uses includes commercial gain. Interesting. What is not scared off with the copyright notice can be crushed with either of the couple of new documents revealed in the practical portion of this manual, that identifying the transgressing party by name and set the terms of the consensual contract. Okay, so the prey is tricked into entering a contract before becoming aware of the contract that has been formed. The pretext used by Big Brother's henchmen for slyly establishing contracts with unwittingly customers are many. The object of all such cons, however, is always the same: the victim citizen's wealth, that is to say, the money, property, and assets. Code enforcement type actors are seeking the slightest measure of justification for carrying out their agenda Nearly all of them know that consent is required every step of the way, though many will arrogantly storm ahead without it, thinking they are above the law. They may be above statutory law or code, but no one is above the articles of the Uniform Commercial Code governing private consensual contracts. Nobody is above the UCC. Okay, next section. A unique aspect of consensual contracts is that the agreed upon terms may be privately enforced, true commercial law, because there is no controversy, dispute, needful of resolution by a third party, court, or judge. The UCC is pre-judicial and non-judicial. That is why the creditor motorist in the above example could begin seizing certain property registered in the officer's trade name, following the officer's default on payment of the obligation after having been given the opportunity to back out of the contract and after being properly invoiced. Because it is so stated in the consensual contract, both the copyright notice and subsequent formal contract, that the creditor motorist would send the officer if he issued a citation. The officer would have consensually entered the contract if, after having been fully noticed of its terms, he did not fully, formally, and officially withdraw and delete, erase, destroy all traces of the motorist's copyrighted property brought into existence by him, and possibly even surrender all original documents, written, electronic, and taped, and all copies thereof, containing both the policeman's signature and the motorist's trade name, depending on the sovereignty of the terms of the contract set by the motorist. All right, next section. Creditor equals sovereign. In modern global society, there are few truly sovereign jurisdictions where outside creditors, Federal Reserve, International Monetary Fund, do not have final say-so over that domain and everything in it. When anyone can dictate the terms of a contract with any government's code enforcement personnel, that party is the creditor in the matter and a sovereign by definition. This is an inescapable fact because, based on the negative value liability aspect of the currency, all such purported value considerations, for example, Federal Reserve notes, all Federal Reserve notes are borrowed into existence and represent debt and liability only. There is, for all intents and purposes, no other way of actualizing political sovereignty on this planet at this time. The sole possible exception might be using overwhelming military force, but any such undertaking is rare and short-lived because the same small group behind the Federal Reserve and International Monetary Fund consortium dictates over the armed forces of all major powers of the world, including the United Nations from the top. These fiends own and control all official media of exchange in currencies and foreclosed on all governments of all stature and installed their own talking heads decades and centuries ago. Therefore, the fullness of our own political power, autonomy, sovereignty is determined solely by your personal abilities in dealing with government, from the frontmen who attempt to engage you in contract at the behest of their masters, the currency government owner creditors, for the purpose of expropriating your wealth, assets, and resources without exchanging anything of value. So they are literally getting something for nothing. This phenomenon is evidenced nowhere more clearly than in contemporary America courtrooms, when a judge threatens a patriot type with contempt if he continues bringing up the issue of constitutional rights. Yeah. Technically speaking, a traffic citation recipient, shadow sovereign, for example, abandons the Constitution in favor of the vehicle code the instant he forks over his driver's license and begins doing business with a traffic cop long before entering the courtroom. Sovereign political power is wielded when a would-be commercial invader marauder withdraws and abandons his or her assault on your property freedom based on the liabilities involved in doing business with you. When you can enforce a private consensual contract against members of the corporate government of the country you live in, despite the fact of being their declared enemy in war, you have indeed demonstrated sovereignty as well as it can be demonstrated. The real game is not in being legally detached from all commercial intercourse in society. The real game is being actively engaged in any and all desirable social commercial exchanges in life. Yep. Not just being penalized and punished solely because one is a participant. The unfortunate status quo for most folks in America at this time. Next section, taking control of the trade name. Whereas the Copyright Notice officially establishes legal title over the trade name under common law and sets forth the terms of the consensual contract for its unauthorized use, the UCC is what is used for enforcing the terms of the contract. Okay. Even though the Copyright Notice does not depend on the UCC for its validity and enforceability, its provisions are written in strict accordance with UCC guidelines for facilitating easy and thorough non-judicial foreclosure proceedings on any who would attempt commercial gain at your expense through unauthorized use of your trade name. However, the paperwork aspect of dealing with assault attacks on your freedom and property will not be taken up here, but rather under handling presentments in the practical portion of this manual. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If government agents, prosecutors and judges, attorneys, policemen, taxmen, etc. can freely engage your ens legis artificial person, strawman trade name in business, then so can you. That their computers are rigged, listing account names in all capital letters only, a practice falling outside both the bounds of English grammar and the prescriptions of law, when such could just as easily be programmed for writing in English, is exclusive evidence that a different game is being played than the one advertised. Every conceivable roadblock for deflecting general comprehension of this most ingenious of subterfuges has been meticulously installed down through the centuries with unimaginable complex safeguards for keeping even lower-level operatives in the dark, pleading innocence and claiming helplessness based on feigned archaic computer programming limitations, however, will no longer wash as an excuse from Big Brother's frontmen. Besides copyrighting the trade name under common law, the most important objective is establishing an equivalent claim under the aegis of the Uniform Commercial Code. Since you are a different party than the ens legis trade name, you may do business with it if you desire, and you can also obtain official acknowledgement of the contract from a government agency, the UCC filing office. The following series of documents has been painstakingly developed and formulated for maximum protection of this contractual relationship, thereby preventing any third party from intervening and impairing the private contract. All right, read all that stuff. All right, next section. The private agreement. Contractual basis. And we will get to this one next time.